We'll give it a minute.
Right.
So it's now broadcasting. Thanks for lining up. All right. We're good. Good evening, everyone. Oh, what's that?
You still got people jumping in there.
Yeah. We have a lot of people jumping in. We'll give it a minute.
And Mr. 70 is already raising his hand. That was a quick hand raise, though.
There's a test.
They're there and gone.
Okay. Give it a second. We're up to 20. All right. We'll get started now. I know there's still some folks joining in, but we've got to take care of a couple of things. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our April 22nd Town Council meeting. It's our continuation of our budget process. What we'll do is we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for men and women serving in harm's way. Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for
which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
justice for all. Okay, thank you all. Thank you all. What we'll do next is we'll go through the roll call for the councilors and the folks at home.
Ms. Uchakusa,
Here.
Ms. Abbott,
Here.
Mr. Hamilton,
Present.
Mr. Katzman,
He's on mute.
Here.
Dr. Ryan,
Present.
Mr. Aguirre.
Here, present. Still working through some bugs.
Mr. Kelly?
Present.
Did you forget Mr.
No, I said Mr.
Oh,
Kelly.
Oh, he was unmuted too? All right, we're getting there. Again, thank you all. Before we get started, I just want to touch base a couple of housekeeping items. It was brought to our attention that there was an updated version of our budget that was posted on April 14th, 15th. It was posted on April 15th. So anyone who had downloaded the budget prior to that had the original budget, and there were a couple of pages through the police budget, fire budget, and capital, the CIP budget that were different than what was discussed last night. I do apologize for.
Yeah, so what you discussed last night was the correct version.
Yeah, what was presented last night was the correct version. For those that had downloaded the document prior to that, those pages were off a bit. And but what was discussed last night is the proposed budget. That's what was voted on. I do believe that moving forward, as we go through tonight's documents, even if you had the older document, the pages should be correct. But I do encourage you to download the current document or review the current document that's on the website if you're following along from home. We also discussed last night the EMA budget that was off of the agenda and was mistakenly left off, and we cannot address that tonight. So we do have to have one more meeting tomorrow night to address the EMA portion, as well as our final budget balance will be reviewed tomorrow night. So we do have one more meeting to get through. Hopefully we'll get through the remainder of the stuff tonight and just have to deal with EMA and our final budget number tomorrow night. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Rayner, who will begin with our town council budget.
Good evening, Mr. President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen listening at home. If you can scroll to page 35, please.
Actually, Mr. Rayner, sorry, just again, just as a reminder, I was getting ahead of myself. For those of you who are at home, if you're on your phone, *6 to mute and unmute, *9 will allow you to raise your hand and it will get our attention. And for those of you that are viewing us through your browser, there is the feature to raise your hand, and when called upon, we will acknowledge you, and please provide us your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on page 35, you have before you the town council budget. The town council postage costs have been moved into the town clerk's budget. Additionally, we are proposing a reduction in the town council contingency fund from $1,000 to $500, and a new line for your annual contribution to the Portsmouth Education Foundation, which you've historically always taken out of your contingency fund. So we are asking for provisional approval of $11,366 for the town council budget.
So moved.
Seconded.
Can you, when you make your motions, can you just mention your names, because people who are on the phone can't see you?
So it was a motion by Dr. Ryan, seconded by Mr. Hampton. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
If we can scroll on page 36, the town administrator budget. Other than contractual pay obligations, there is a reduction in copier costs and the addition of a capital lease cost for town hall security improvements, which was approved last night. Additionally, as we discussed last night, healthcare costs have been broken out more clearly in this budget. For each department, you will see separate lines as appropriate for healthcare, dental care, and healthcare spending account contribution costs. We are asking for provisional approval of $309,725 for the town administrator department.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Len Katzman, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
On page 37 begins the town clerk's budget. The deputy town clerk position has been vacant for going on 6 years now. In this budget, we propose to eliminate the position and delay hire a clerk in January of the next fiscal year, in this next fiscal year. So in salaries, there's an addition, in addition to the 2% raises, this budget also reflects an anticipated step increase in pay for the junior clerk in the office. On the next page, in operations, office supplies were under budgeted last year. Advertising now accounts for advertising required by council action. Additionally, we have included funding for clerk training and conferences. We'll also, sorry, I was jumping ahead. The proposed town clerk budget is projected to increase by 13.01%, and we are asking permission or provisional approval of $366,925 for clerk expenditures.
This is Linda Jukusa, so moved.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye.
hi, Chair.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Scroll to page 39, there is the canvassing budget. The proposed canvassing budget is reflective of a major general election year, and expenditures have been revised to reflect higher associated costs. In operations, you will see an increase in polling place rent. The rental fees for elections are usually stipends to cover the utility, heating, and cleaning costs for facilities. We have normally paid $125 to both St. Barnabas and Prudence Island since 2014. Our agreements require access to the facilities for both the day before the election and the election day. For this election cycle, it includes Labor Day. The increase is therefore as a buffer should the facilities request more for utility cost increase over time. Utility cost increases over time incurred because of the setup on a holiday and the loss of revenue because they cannot rent their site on Labor Day. Additionally, there is an increase in police detail costs. These increases are a result of new requirements. It includes one officer for 2 shifts on election day, as well as a detail required to deliver the election memory sticks to the Board of Election by 10 a.m. the day after election. We don't know ahead of time what the rank or rate will be of that person tasked to deliver those sticks, and we have tried to account for those costs in this budget. So overall, we are requesting provisional approval of $268,760 for the canvassing budget.
Yes, Mr. Jukusa.
I have a question for for Jackie. Do these costs take into account the tremendous number of mail-in ballots that are going to be used this cycle because of COVID-19? Maybe.
She's there.
Oh, okay.
Just got to get her off mute.
Okay, just bear with us for a moment. Okay,
Uh,
back-
sh-
Here we go.
Can you hear me now?
yep,
No, these costs did not reflect COVID-19 at all. All of these numbers were established in November of 2019. So honestly, even the election coming in June 2nd, I'm reviewing all of my costs that I had already established and are trying to work around. So we'll see exactly what happens. No, these numbers do not reflect the mail-in ballots.
Are there other towns who've started to do this, and are they coming up with a general upward or downward movement?
There have been continuous conversations. Right now, the state has taken over the vast costs of mailing out the applications to individual voters. As a matter of fact, this week, almost every voter in Rhode Island will receive an application to cast a mail ballot on June 2nd. They've also provided the return envelopes for the ballots themselves. I do believe that that will be the practice in upcoming elections for the state to take on a lot of that cost, but there are going to be additional postage costs for us and fees for people to process those applications.
And before COVID, Portsmouth was paying the postage costs for people who wanted mail-in ballots. Is that true?
No, we were paying, I would send applications, but the costs for the actual ballots themselves are the responsibility of the Department of State.
Okay, so the state taking over the costs of the mail-in ballots this time around is not reducing Portsmouth's mail-in ballot costs?
No,
Okay.
because it wasn't part of the calculation.
And are we going to have fewer hours? I'm sorry, fewer polling stations because of the large number of mail-in ballots and COVID concerns?
In the upcoming primary, there may be. In the upcoming November, I think that we're going to have all of our polling locations open.
Okay. So basically, you just don't know how this budget might be affected by what you ultimately have to end up doing.
The instructions are coming on a minute-by-minute basis.
Okay. Motion to approve, this is Linda Ujifuza, motion to approve the proposed budget for the canvassing office of $268,760.
Keith Hamilton, second provisionally.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Mrs. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Here we see the beginning of the finance budget. In the salaries and benefits, you'll see a change that reflects that we do have one employee who is elected to enroll in the town family health plan. Next page, operations. The major change here is in the anticipated finance operations is due to an increase in our liability and property insurance premiums. Overall, the proposed finance expenditures are projected to rise 3.24%, and we ask for provisional approval of $813,064.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
Provisionally.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Okay, human resources budget starts on page 42. Salaries and benefits. You'll see that, again, we are accounting for one employee who has switched from taking the healthcare waiver to enrolling in the town health plan. On the next page, in operations, we are accounting for 2 anticipated or possible retirements in the next fiscal year. Overall, we project a 5.26% decrease in HR expenditures and ask for provisional approval of $2,091,731 for this budget.
This is Mark Ryan. So moved.
Keith Hamilton, second.
Provisionally.
Mr. Rayner says the provisional part.
Okay. Sorry.
You can't be too provisional in these things.
Can't be too provisional.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Okay, next page, page 44, you see the legal budget. This budget accounts for legal fees and costs associated with possible arbitration over an ongoing union contract negotiation. We're therefore asking for provisional approval of $388,690 for this budget.
Linda Ujifuza, so moved.
Len Katzman, second.
All motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, the next page, page 45, you see the budget for information technology. This budget accounts for police, fire, DPW the police, fire, and DPW desktop replacement program, replacement of our map printer, and administrative and collections software for the tax office. These costs are offset by an anticipated decrease in other software and license costs. We are asking for provisional approval of $215,667.
Linda Jukusa, so moved.
Lynn Katzman, second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
And Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President, I'm getting texts of people who are saying that, or just one person who says that they want to know the code. They're not able to get in because they're being told that the meeting has not yet started.
They're on the wrong day then.
You're using the wrong link.
Yeah, the meeting ID, Linda,
Yes.
932.
Yep.
Oh, that's a dial-in by phone, I'm sorry. Yeah, 932
Uh-huh.
8853 3142 and the pound sign.
Okay, can I repeat that? It's 932-8853-3142 pound sign.
Correct.
They don't need pound sign if they're on a computer.
Okay, and is there a password?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Thank you.
Just making sure this.
Okay, again, page 46, we will see the expenditures for the tax assessor's office. In salaries and benefits, one employee did retire from the office last year, and the new employee was hired at a lower rate, which reduced overall salary and benefits costs. On the next page, in operations, postage and miscellaneous fees have been adjusted to be in line with actual spending, and the revaluation line has been reduced to reflect that it's already been accomplished this year. So we are overall asking, overall, the tax division budget is projected to decrease by 9.16%, and we are asking for provisional approval of $531,201.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
Okay, all those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
And Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Let's go to page 48, please. Thank you. Okay, beginning on page 48 is the planning budget. In salaries and benefits, the budget reflects 2% raises plus a contractually obligated step increase for the wastewater manager's salary. Next page, operations. You will note the capital lease payment for a replacement new building official vehicle, which was approved last night. Additionally, funding for the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission is included in this budget as in years past. Requests for AIPC for future funding beyond this budget, if made, will be reflected in the civic support budget. Overall, planning expenditures are projected to decrease by 2.14%, and we are asking for provisional approval of $375,773.
This is Mark Ryan, so moved.
Linda Jukusa, second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Mr. President, hold on. You have a hand up in the outside.
Okay,
And I'd also like to make a couple of comments, if I may.
sure. Okay,
Yeah, there's a hand up, but if you don't mind, I'll go first. Mr. I haven't asked you this ahead of time, Mr. Rayner, but the community survey, we have $8,500 left in there. Is that enough to complete all the work that needs to be finished, that's it? Is that being done for the recreation center?
That was the actual, so the money that was left over, and that is part of that surplus will be part of the surplus for the next audit.
All right, and then $5,000 for the comprehensive plan, is that going to be enough to finish it with all the public hearings and everything else that's going to be going on?
$5,000?
Yeah.
That's what we anticipate, yes.
Okay. And my only other comment is I'm getting more and more worried about the $18,000 for the Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission. I got to be quite honest with you. Over the past 5 years, I haven't seen the value in what they're bringing for that $18,000. They've made promises and broke them continuously in terms of keeping us updated on what's going on. They did a massive water study and promised best practices, and none of those have been put in place. I am not comfortable giving $18,000 for an organization that really is not bringing anything back to the table for the town of Portsmouth.
Hamilton? Mr. Jabuda, did you?
I believe there might be representatives of the Quinnipiac Island Planning Commission.
Hold on, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Put papers over your microphone?
No, I don't believe I have.
There you go.
There you are.
All right, there I am. Okay, maybe I did. I believe there are members of the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission or representatives who might care to respond to Mr. Hamilton's comments, and Ms. McNally in particular. So if Mr. President, I'd request that since Mr. Hamilton did make those comments, a representative be allowed to respond.
Well, yeah, we do have a couple of hands up, so we will, if they're on the line, we will allow them to speak. I believe the first hand was,
Actually, Mr. President, if I may,
oh, yes, Mr. Catherine.
I just want to make my comment on that line item. So this is a line item that historically has always been in our civic support budget. I'm actually very pleased to see that it is now in the planning department budget because that means that the town administrator and the town planner who are responsible for this budget. And my simple question to the town planner and to the town administrator is, I recognize this organization, like any organization, has had some difficulty on and off. That said, you're the folks who put this 18,000 in this budget, in your budget. Do you believe you get for the town an appropriate return on that line item?
I'll go first, and then I'll let Gary go if that's okay, Mr.
Yes. Go ahead.
First, I just want to make a minor correction, Mr. Katzman. My apologies, but there is a correction. The AIPC budget has historically been in the planning budget. There was a request last year to place civic support into, or AIPC into civic support, and that was lost in the myriad of notes that we took last year. And whenever civic support was discussed this last February, I believe, we did say that we'll keep it in planning for this year, and then if there are requests made for funding in out years, we would put it in civic support.
I appreciate that correction, Mr. Rayner. Nonetheless, it is in the planning department budget, which I believe is appropriate in the sense that you have a line in the operations budget for many departments of professional services. These are monies you pay to outside organizations for services. The AIPC is not in the same exact type of category as a vendor, but nonetheless, it's money our town decides to spend in return for getting something of value in return. And my question is still, do you, in your opinion, are we getting an appropriate return to the town for the money we're committing?
For the work that they've done, I've been very impressed with the work that they've done. I will say that I'm concerned that we have lost two chiefs over there in relatively short order. But I will say, I mean, I was very impressed with the work on Island Waters, the reports that they did, the work that they did. So I'm happy with AIPC. I would like to see them do more, and perhaps that's incumbent upon the 3 town administrators and planning departments on Aquidneck Island to make sure that that happens. I'd like Gary to speak to this because he works with them way more than I do. Gary Crosby.
Mr. Crosby, he's just got to unmute yourself.
We're unmuting you, Gary.
Are we unmuted? Gary, can you unmute? Oh,
There
there.
you go. There you go.
There we go. I am a firm believer in regional planning. We don't operate in a vacuum. And I think that the only mechanism in place on Aquidneck Island for us to engage in regional planning, apart from me picking up the phone and calling my colleagues and trying to put something together ad hoc, is the Aquidneck Island Planning Commission, and I believe that we should continue to support their efforts.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Crosby.
Thank you, Mr. Crosby. Okay, so I believe it's the first caller. I just have it as 442.
Mr. Aguirre?
Could you just provide your name and address for us before you begin?
Okay, this is Nancy Grebe, 110 Thayer Drive.
Good evening.
Good evening. AIPC is not a joint municipal planning commission. AIPC is a private organization. AIPC does not have the support of the residents of Aquidneck Island. In their last audited financial statement, AIPC spent $3,400 on fundraising. They only received $2,900 in donations. This small amount not only shows that they do not have the support of the residents, AIPC does not even have the financial support of its own 12-member board of directors. AIPC has not completed a single project that benefits the residents of Portsmouth since before 2012. In that same time frame, AIPC has had 6 executive directors. This indicates a weak and volatile organization. Last year, AIPC had a secret, non-public forum on the topic of the west side of Aquidneck Island. West Side residents who would be most impacted and the press were excluded. What did AIPC have to hide? 2 years ago, then AIPC Executive Director John Shea came before the council and residents of Portsmouth. Mr. Shea stated the Clean Waters RFP would be posted in 10 days. It was not posted in 10 days. It was not posted in 10 weeks. It was not posted in 10 months. The Clean Waters RFP was posted January 2020. That RFP cited a BMP to be constructed on private property on Island Drive in Middletown. The head of this homeowners association has commented on this at several public meetings. He stated that without AIPC, he and his 30-odd neighbors would have been required to pay for the BMP themselves, as they should have. The head of the HOA, is Richard Adams. Mr. Adams was the last board chair of AIPC. And in that capacity, Mr. Adams served on the Clean Waters Committee that selected the BMP sites. This is a clear conflict of interest. Recently, AIPC approached the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and requested a line of credit because they could not pay their anticipated bills in a timely manner. No accomplishments of note, staffing issues, financial problems, secret meetings, conflict of interest from the board. This is AIPC. Since 2012, Portsmouth has squandered over $162,000 of taxpayers' money on this organization, and AIPC is requesting another $18,000 taxpayer dollars this year. COVID-19 has changed all of our lives. Portsmouth has established a food pantry for our residents in need. How can you justify giving this do-nothing organization another $18,000 when that money is desperately needed to feed Portsmouth's hungry families? Portsmouth residents have not donated money to AIPC personally. I have already donated and will continue to donate money to our food pantry. The food pantry has already done more for the citizens of Portsmouth in its few weeks of operation than AIPC has done in over 8 years. Please do not give taxpayer dollars to this undeserving organization. Thank you, Mr. Aguirre.
Thank you, Ms. Green. If we could go to the next hand up, I believe was Allison McNally. Allison, you're muted. Are we able to unmute? Or, okay.
Yeah, I'm unmuted now. Hi, can you hear me?
We got you. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. I'm here to take questions from the council. I'm disappointed to hear Mr. Hamilton's concerns, and I would just like to say that in terms of statements about the Island Waters project, I'm a little confused. As for the BMP projects, we are about to break ground for the Wivets work in the Sisson Pond watershed, which is on the Middletown and Portsmouth town lines. So that work is about to commence and be completed by close of May this year. We are also working on finalizing the details for the Wivets work on Carriage Drive in Portsmouth. So we are moving forward with this work. We have also delivered on a number of project deliverables that have been helpful to water quality in general on Aquidneck Island as well as in Portsmouth. We have our Status of Island Waters report, which in actuality, the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management is using and incorporating into their water quality program for Aquidneck Island. We've also supported the IDDE work for the town of Portsmouth and provided technical assistance beyond that and still have funding to provide for that. So I would accept any specific questions from Mr. Hamilton about his concerns or any other member of the council.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions specifically for Ms. McNally?
Mr. President, I don't have questions. I'll make a statement that promises have been made and not kept. We were supposed to be kept up on a regular basis. And mysteriously in the past week, we got a report from AIPC. Quarterly reports haven't been made, and required financial reports haven't been made on time. It's just a continual breakdown of the fundamentals that I need to see in an organization in order to give them money. We've given multiple opportunities for the organization to come forward, and again, having multiple executive directors over time leads me to believe that there's shakiness in the foundation of the organization, and it just concerns me to give $18,000 of the taxpayer money to the organization. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Ms. Sujapuzzi.
Mr. President, the fundamental question here has to do with whether or not any of the nonprofits to whom we give money to are serving an essential function for Portsmouth. And I have not heard anything that states that AIPC has not done any work to protect our drinking water supplies or help with water drainage studies and remediation work. if you were those kind of concerns, then I think those would be valid reasons to not fund the organization. But basically, they're doing important work for the island. I've heard our planner say that he believes that they are an important organization, and I believe that we should continue to fund them. Thank you. And I guess my question might be if Allison wanted to explain a little bit to folks what the abbreviations he's using are. For example, WIVETS, whatnot. And in addition, Mr. Hamilton, I would direct you to the reports that they've been providing that outlines their technical work. Thank you.
Okay. I do just, before we move on, again, appreciate your comment. We're having a tough time though hearing you. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's your microphone is getting covered up or something, but you come in and then you fade out. So I'll try to, I believe we heard most of your comments there. Just something on your end with the microphone, but I think we got most of it. I do.
Well, can I, then I guess just let me reiterate that the fundamental question here is whether AIPC is providing technical benefit to our town with respect to an important government service, which is to make sure that we have clean drinking water and our stormwater issues, the environmental issues are being addressed. And they have provided significant reports to that effect. I have not heard any criticisms that say that this is not true. And I have also heard that our planner, our town planner, whose opinion I very much respect, supports continuing to have the $18,000 go to this organization. And therefore, I would recommend that we continue to fund them. And that if anyone has other questions about the technical work that AIPC is doing for the town, that they should direct those questions to Ms. McNally, who can answer them right now. Because otherwise, it's a lot of, frankly, extraneous criticisms, and which I don't think helps us to decide whether to spend our money wisely. Thank you.
All right. We do have another caller on the line. I just know it as 478. Do we have access to them?
Hi, they just unmuted me. Tom Grieve, 110th there. I wanted to answer Mr. Crosby's question of about the how would we do joint planning if we didn't have AIPC. And the fact of the matter is, I believe we'd do it much better with the town planners and ad hoc people who were experts in the areas as various problems or projects came up. That would allow us to choose the right people for the right projects rather than the one-size-fits-all AIPC. And it would involve the town planners to a greater extent. I would also like to answer Ms. McNally's statements that they are doing what they said they were going to do. The EPA grant, the major deliverable was 6 to 10 BMPs in 2 years. That's what AIPC committed to when they asked for the grant. EPA gave them initially 3 years. We are now into the 4th year, and she is now promising that very soon 1 BMP will be started. If that doesn't show what's going on in that organization, I don't know what will. That's it. And everything that either I or my wife has said, we can back up with facts and documents. So this organization is really one that is out of control. It is very, very heavily influenced by special interests, and it is not doing things in Portsmouth's best interest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Grieve. Okay. I just want to make sure, see if we have any more, no more hands up. Okay. Any more last final comments or anything from counselors? Okay. All right. We had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all.
Scroll to page 50, please. Okay, here we see the beginning of the building officials' budget. Salaries and benefits, this budget reflects 2% raises plus a step increase in the assistant building official salary. On the next page, in operations, these expenditures are expected to remain level with respect to last year, except for contract services and Prudence Island inspections. Our former contract electrical inspector retired, and costs for electrical and plumbing inspections have increased. This budget also accounts for an increase in the number of inspections on Prudence Island due to mandated backflow preventer installations. Expenditures are projected to increase by 8.35%. We are asking for provisional approval of $344,015 for the building officials budget.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Linda Jukusa, second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Right on. Next page, on page 52, we see the budget for the planning board. This budget reflects a 2% raise for the admin officer and a more accurate forecast of advertising costs. We ask for provisional approval of $37,642 for planning board expenditures.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
You're muted. What happened?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
Scroll to 53. Here we have the budget for the economic development or business development director. So with the exception of a reduction in anticipated software costs, there are really no significant changes to this budget. We project a 2.89% decrease in expenditures and ask for provisional approval of $42,532 for the economic development division.
Len Katzman, so moved.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, we can scroll to page 68, please. On page 68, you see the beginning, you see the recreation department budget. The recreation budget is relatively unchanged. Overall, we're projecting a very slight decrease in recreation department expenditures and ask for provisional approval of $208,411 for this budget.
So moved.
And so moved.
Mr. Rayner, I have a question.
We need a second because we got two so moves.
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Who was the first?
Ms. Abbott.
Mr. Shmuley, do you have a question?
Yeah, Mr. Rayner, do these numbers in the Recreation Department budget reflect COVID cost, effect?
No.
Who's the question to?
To you, Mr. Rayner.
Okay. In developing this budget, you can see that there's really no increase in the budget. We are, as you heard the governor today, we are already working with DEM to open the beaches. So they may open a little later, so there's no real big increase that we expect in staff or beach. It does reflect a 2% increase for the recreation director, a reduction in some of the healthcare costs, but the rest of the budget is pretty much flatlined. I'm not sure what COVID would do to some of those expenses, other than perhaps reduce them.
I guess I'm concerned that if we need to enforce social distancing and we have crowds on the beach.
That would be a police matter, and obviously that is one of the things that Janet Coit was directed to start developing. We had our first conference call yesterday. The next conference call was scheduled in 2 weeks, but I think the governor has upped that, as she said today in her press conference, that she's expecting to put something out mid to late next week. So there's more to follow on that. One of the things that what they want to do is they want to ensure that the municipal owned beaches and parks are in lockstep with the state beaches and parks, so that you don't have one opening and not the other. And like little kids soccer, everybody runs to the open beach. I don't know what the plan is going to be yet. Again, I mean, this is discussed twice a day, every day. We recognize that there will need to be social distancing. One of the proposals that was put forth yesterday is that these beaches and parks would be open, but there would be no restroom facilities. I don't know what that's going to do, but that was one of the things that was discussed. As I stated yesterday, well, there may be a decrease in some of her expenditures because either a late start or a non-start of some summer programs. Many of her programs now go throughout the year. So this accounts for keeping those programs going through the school year when we anticipate that the economy and social distance will open up and social distancing standards will start to lighten.
I know that in Common Fence Point, there's live video streaming of classes, and I'm just wondering if the Parks and Rec Department would consider altering what they offer, to offer something in this age of Zoom.
I didn't hear the first part of that, offering what?
I'm sorry. You know what? You're absolutely. I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm now realizing that holding a piece of paper in front of me is blocking my microphone. I apologize. Stone age here. Mr. Rayner, I was just wondering if at some point soon, the recreation director would be considering trying to accommodate the fact that we may continue under a COVID situation where she would have to offer classes online. I know that Common Fence Point is starting to offer that sort of thing. And whether you were thinking about making those kind of changes to the budget.
I can't imagine that she wouldn't be thinking about something like that. She's very forward-leaning. She has lots of ideas. Right now, you've heard discussion about the food pantry earlier today. That's essentially Wendy. So I know that she has been working full-time, getting that up and running and working with the EOC. And as that gets handed off to other people, should be working on other projects.
Right. Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that because I know Wendy has been doing an amazing job stepping up to run the food pantry. So thank you, Wendy. Thank you.
Okay, so just to circle back, we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Mr. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
If we could scroll to page 69, please. Okay, here you see the budgets for Glen Park and Melville Park. We'll take Glen Park first. Essentially, the recreation budget for Glen Park, there's only a slight increase for refuse removal. And we asked for provisional approval of $8,200 for Glen Park operations.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Mark Ryan seconded.
Got a question.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
All right, so refuse disposal in 6 months, actual to date, is exceeded your proposed FY21 budget. Have we switched providers?
I'm not sure exactly what happened there. I think Ryan can probably speak better to that. But this budget came from the former committee members, and it was worked through Wendy and Brian. I believe that $500 is probably enough.
Your actual FY 2019 was $703.
And in 18, it was 447. So
Agreed.
we're aware of it. We're tracking it. You'll see, and obviously you've noticed something that we probably should have highlighted yesterday. In this budget format, for the first time, we're showing you the actual numbers for the previous fiscal year. So you'll see actual 2018, and normally you would go from, it would say just actual 2019, but we put the approved 2019 next to the actual 2019, so you can see numbers like that. And yes, they do jump out. It's a small number, but we're confident 500 is small.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. There's no comment, no other questions. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, below that, you see the Melville Park committee budget. We are more accurately in this budget accounting for brush and trail clearing and algae treatment. We ask for provisional approval of $13,950 for Melville Park operations.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Linda Ujifusa, second.
All those in favor?
Mr. President.
Mr. Kelly.
So on trail maintenance, the last actual numbers we have is for FY 18, and it's 3 times more than the current budget. Just wondering how that
Because
is going to be.
that committee was, right, the way they were recording their expenses, they were putting everything on one line.
They were putting everything where?
They were
On one line?
putting things and they were just charging everything in one line.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you very much.
So back to our, we have a motion and a second for the provisional approval of $13,950. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Ms. Mr. Katzman,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment for the administration that this expenditures for parks is very useful information. I was wondering if we could potentially break up some of our other parks into similar format going forward.
What parks are you specifically referring to?
Elmhurst Park, Mill Hope Park, etc. I know where they are in the budget. They're in DPW, but this is a very useful way to see how they're broken out.
Right, we can work on that, and Lisa's going to speak in just a second, but the difference between Glen Park and Melville Park is those were committees, those were operations run by a committee. The other parks and playgrounds were just maintained by the DPW. So Lisa, if you'd like to speak.
Virtual accounting software, we're going to be able to break all those parts and
Sure.
all the expenses down in a more transparent format for the user.
So if you didn't hear, what she's reminding me of, we are in the midst of installing new accounting software. So that level of detail that normally would be very difficult to extract, we'll be able to pull that out for anybody willing to look at that. And we'll take that comment on board and we'll see what we can do in the next one.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So now if we can scroll to page 94. 94. Okay. So next we'll discuss enterprise funds. For those listening who have not heard this before, enterprise funds are established to account for operations of a specific activity. Enterprise funds are segregated from other town funds and accounts with the intent that revenues generated by the enterprise activity will be devoted principally to funding all operations of the enterprise activity. In plain language, the revenues generated by the enterprise activity are intended to pay for the cost and operation of that activity. So as you see, beginning on 94, page 94, the first one is the Glen Farm Equestrian Center. In accordance with the concessionaire's contract with the town, the concessionaire shall pay the town an annual base fee of $18,000 plus 5% of their annual gross receipts. An amount not to exceed the first $5,000 of revenue share generated during each quarter for the initial term shall be immediately credited back to the concessionaire to be invested in repairs, renovation, and long-term maintenance. This is monitored through a regular review of the center's financial statements by the Director of Economic Development. So here in operations, we project expenditures for grounds maintenance, and we request provisional approval of $10,000 for that expense.
So moved.
Operations and revenues.
So that was Len.
Second.
And we'll take a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
And in the line below that, you would see that we project a surplus of $8,000, which was approved last night in the revenue discussion. On the next page, page 95, this is really just for information. This is the Headley Street Transfer Station. And this budget is approved on a calendar year, and it was approved November 25th of 19. So this is already approved.
Mr. President, Mr. Rayner, The note in the upper right-hand corner says 11/25/2020.
Yes,
Approved.
that's correct, and I'm glad you noticed it, thank you. There you go.
That'll be an edit. in the
Yes,
next
that-
version.
it's already corrected and ready to go after, once we post the provisional budget. So thank you. Page 96 begins the Glen Manor House budget. The Glen Manor House budget was developed and approved by the Glen Manor House Authority before the full onset of the current pandemic. Many bookings have been postponed, but they are starting to see an increase in cancellations. We are hopeful the economy will recover quickly, but realize the longer the current situation draws out, the greater the impact on revenue projections. We are asking you to provisionally approve the budget tonight. However, we will review this budget with the Glen Manor House Authority before the May 11th Town Council meeting. And I expect by then, we will present to you a revised Glen Manor House proposal based on better revenue projections before you adopt the budget. So tonight, we are asking you to provisionally approve the originally projected revenue of $615,000.
Keith Hamilton, so moved.
Glenn Katzman, second.
All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Just went with it.
The motion passes 7-0.
If you go to the next page, we are asking you to approve the Glen Manor House operations costs of $260,425.
Mr. Hamilton, so moved.
Glenn Katzman.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
Okay, we have a motion.
I have a
Oh,
question.
Mr. Jukusa. Yes.
Mr. Rayner, we all know that heating oil and other things are going down in cost. Does this budget reflect that?
This budget was given to me right before we had to turn the budget. We had to finish the budget at the end of March and turn it over to you at the beginning of April.
Okay, so it's the same thing as,
Correct.
okay, sorry, thank you.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
And then lastly, we are asking you to provisionally approve capital improvements, $88,644.
So moved. Keith Hamilton.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
And Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0.
So if we go to the next page on page 98. This is the septic loan program. Many enforcement need to install new on-site wastewater systems due to mandatory compliance with state regulations for septic systems and the phase-out of cesspools. Because of this, the town created a loan program administered for the town by the Rhode Island Housing Authority. The town borrows funds at low cost and then relends these funds to citizens in the form of low-interest loans to help them address this issue. The town maintains this program for those that may not meet all the requirements of the Community Septic System Loan Program, or CISLIP. But tonight, we're asking for provisional approval to transfer $46,940 from the general fund to the septic loan program.
Andrew Kelly, so moved.
Linda Jukusa, second.
Motion and second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton,
Aye.
Capson,
Aye.
Mr. Kelly,
Aye.
Dr. Ryan,
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. So below that line, you'll see the total for revenue. The transfer in from the general fund plus program service fees amounts to $53,750. We therefore ask for provisional approval of $53,740 total income to the septic loan program.
Andrew Kelly.
Mr. Hamilton, so moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
With regard to expenses, expenses associated with this program are projected to be $8,000, leaving $45,740 available for the program. We ask for provisional approval of a net amount in the program of $45,740.
Andrew Kelly, so moved.
Mark.
Andrew Jukusa, second.
I think it was Linda. All those in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Capson?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguilar.
Aye. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, you can scroll up to page 70. Thank you. Okay, here you can see the summary of proposed civic support expenditures for fiscal year 21, which were reviewed by the council on February 10th. The amount of support requested and the organization that made the request are also listed for your reference. Since your meeting in February, the the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department Board of Control has issued a letter requesting we maintain the volunteer department and civic support. This letter is included in your budget books. While this is in accordance with the memorandum of agreement between the town and the board, you may recall they requested to be placed in the operations budget at last year's budget hearing. Keith Ford and I have worked over the last year with the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department Chief to develop a budget in line with other town revenue and operations budgets. This is also included in your budget books. This process was important not only to correctly project the anticipated revenue and expenditures for this department, but also to accurately determine an appropriate town grant and assess how that request was derived. I received their letter the day before I was required to submit a proposed budget to the town council. In their letter, the Board of Control states my budget proposal cannot be accepted in its current form and is requesting $193,990, which is being portrayed as a 23% decrease from last year's town grant. I deeply appreciate their concern, but understand that you, the town council, is the body that I submit proposed budgets to. The board arrived at their $193,990 request by adding the $170,550 appropriated last year to the $80,330 authorized from the fiscal year 19 surplus for the purchase of needed equipment. That sums to $250,870, which is 23% more than their current request of $193,990. I believe, and it was my understanding, that the $80,330 authorized from the fiscal year 19 surplus was a one-time grant to purchase equipment and was not intended as an increase to last year's civic support grants. This belief and the budget working papers following the civic support page explain my recommended appropriation of $187,302, which, according to my method, is a 9.83% increase over last year's grant of $170,540. Overall, civic support is proposed to rise 6.35%, and I propose $1,028,226 for civic support. This includes $116,092 in state library aid, which is a pass-through item in revenue and expense to the Portsmouth Free Public Library.
Questions for Mr. Rayner?
Yes.
In looking at this budget back in February, I'm reading the minutes here, specifically for the Newport County Mental Health. We added $3,000 for Be Great for Nate. That motion was made by me, seconded by Mr. Katzman. A motion to amend was made by Ms. Ujifusa. Motion to approve the amendment passed, motion to amend was made by Ms. Ujifusa to fund Newport Mental Health at $3,000 as well, seconded by myself. Motion to approve the amendment passed 7-0, and the main motion then passed 7-0. So we should have $3,000 for Newport County Mental Health. I would make a recommendation that we take $3,000 from the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department and remove that from their special events fund, which I'm assuming their special events fund helps fund the fundraising that they do. And if the special events fund is $10,000 to raise, hang on here, there's a number here someplace, to raise roughly $34,000, then they need some work on how to fundraise, because it shouldn't take you 25% cost to raise that money. So I would recommend that we restate the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department budget by removing $3,000 under the Special Events Fund and turn that to $7,802, and reinstate the $3,000 for Newport County Mental Health.
Two things. I read the motion along with you, and I owe the council an apology. You are correct. We did miss that. So there should have been $3,000 for Newport County Community Health. With respect to the argument on the volunteer fire department, it would be more appropriate because they are not in the operations budget. This is a private nonprofit that we support through civic support now. It would be more appropriate just to reduce the town grant to the organization. We don't have control of the budget, so it would be inappropriate for us to tell them where to take that $3,000 from that budget. So it would be more appropriate just to grant them $3,000 less than what's.
So then I will reflect my motion to change the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department line item to $184,302.
Andrew Kelly, second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the line item for the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department civic support request.
No, it's two motions there. It's to reinstate the $3,000 for Newport County Community Mental Health, and to remove that money from the Prudence Island Fire Department and restate their line item at $184,302.
Correct. I apologize for that one. Sorry.
It's okay.
We have a motion and a second.
You also have 4 hands looking at you.
Hands up. Yeah, I got 5. I got one. I got a big purple one right in front of me. Hold on here. What is the first? Okay. First one is Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Morris, I wish to speak on the following topic, so I'll wait.
You want to wait?
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. was the next one Eric D?
ERICD,
PRICD?
that's the Eastern Rhode Island. It's probably started for Turpin.
Okay, so
We may want to wait on that.
we may want, so, okay, we think that's Eastern Rhode Island, okay? So it's not Eric D. Let's go to Chief Dragon.
Okay, I unmuted. Are you able to hear me?
We got you.
Okay, so in response to the special events line item, those expenses were real numbers, and that's what it takes to run our Fireman's Fair and what it takes to run our clam bake. So those were real numbers and what it took us to fund those and have those events to raise money. So I will tell you that as of right now, our Memorial Day clam bake has been canceled. So that is $1,800 that we requested to fund that event. We have not yet canceled our Fireman's Fair, which is our biggest fundraising event of the year. So that's $7,000 that we're requesting to fund that ultimately raises last year over $24,000. So we're still keeping that in there, but I can see where Mr. Hamilton, you know, in the current COVID, you know, pandemic, we have canceled that event. So I just don't want you to take away the remaining funds in that line item so that we can still have fundraising for our Fireman's Fair.
But the motion was changed to just decrease your total expenditure down to 184. So you can shift money anywhere you want within your budget.
Yes, but I just wanted to let you know that those are the numbers. Those are the actual numbers that we have in our budget to run those events.
Understood. And I'll stipulate that it is more expensive to do anything on Prudence Island, but 25% cost to run an event seems like it's awfully high to me. And that's just from running events myself in the past.
Chief, I just got a quick question.
Sure.
Did you just say that you were planning to use $1,800 for the clam bake?
So we were, our event expenditures, yes.
Okay. How much what's your projected revenue from the clam bake? Just curious, because in your budget here, it's $1,600.
Okay, so you're looking at
the projected revenues.
Yes. I'm looking at a different spreadsheet.
And on a secondary note, if I might jump in, I don't necessarily think it's the taxpayer's responsibility to be funding the event. You could take the expenses from the event out of the funds that are raised as well. So if you raise $10,000 and it costs you $1,800 to do it, you've netted $8,200. The cost of running the event for a private organization shouldn't necessarily be taken out of taxpayer funds.
True.
So a lot of this too was has been changed. Mr. Rayner and I had been working, and Chief Ford had been working on this when it got presented to the Board of Control. We did look at our revenue as part funding the budget. So
in compiling these numbers for you, I would have to go back to the earlier worksheet, so.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you very much.
Fujikusa?
I'm wondering if I might be able to amend Mr. Hamilton's motion to, or if, I don't know if it's a second separate motion, but I mean, one motion is to fix the typo and put back the 3,000 to the Newport Mental Health Group. That's just going to be done, right? It doesn't, does that require a motion?
Yeah.
We already voted on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we voted on that, and so the current motion is to try to fund that additional 3,000 by looking at the Prudence Fire Department. But I'm wondering if I can amend that motion to more broadly, or ask Mr. Rayner to more broadly look at the entire budget to see if savings can be drawn from the fact that certain things have closed down because of COVID, but also because certain prices will have come down because of COVID. As I noted, I believe in March, gas was down 10.5%, fuel oil is down 13.7%. And so in the coming month, when you have a chance to see how things are shaking out a bit more, could I just request that whatever we're adding tonight to civic support be funded by looking at those broader things and not simply the Prudence Fire Department fund?
With respect, we're well aware that the price of fuel and heating oil has come down. That has been taken into consideration for all the departments with the exception of the enterprise fund and Glen Manor House. So we've already done that.
Oh, okay.
Twice. So I'm hesitant to I don't want to say that I can deliver something that I know is going to be quite difficult.
Well, also, so many things in having to close down will be unfortunately reducing their income and their expenses. I don't know which one is going to be the bigger amount, but I'm just wondering if overall we can make changes to the civic support, because I feel they're going to probably be, I mean, my calculation is it'll be about $11,000 difference that we look, because I'd like to propose some additional ones tonight too, but that we look more broadly than just doing a one-for-one swap, and ask the staff to look more broadly.
I would just like to say that, I mean, if the question is, do you want to add money to the civic support and then ask us to go back to the budget again and look for money?
We'll not go back and look
because we've already done that. And the position that we're in right now, as I tried to state Monday night and last night, I think any savings that we might find because something has either been shut down, cost is decreased, I think that's going to be more than offset by increased costs. For instance, we don't know how many people will be out because they've been infected, and that affects overtime. And more specifically, we have to watch revenues like a hawk. So remember, that very first night, it's a two-pronged approach. I mean, we set up the emergency fund, but we also monitor and phase in expenditures. So all expenditures will be approved by the finance director and myself. We're going to restrict spending from the very first day so that we can ensure that we don't go into red in any area. We will phase in expenditures as we feel comfortable, those approved expenditures as we feel comfortable. So I know that's a long answer. I'm not comfortable going back through the budget again and looking for where we can cut money.
Okay, I just thought that there would be a process of going back through it a bit more, just because of COVID, the situation will just become clearer as the week in the next few weeks. But
well, actually, a minute where we can cut money to put to increase money.
I see.
About,
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Then I will not amend Mr. Hamilton's motion.
So at the moment, we have the motion to restore the $3,000 to the Newport Mental Health, and we have the reduction in the Prudence Island Volunteer Fire Department by $3,000. So there's no change to the bottom line of the civic support request.
Correct.
So we have a motion and a second on those items. We have no more comments or questions? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So all in favor?
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
I would like to make a comment here on the civic support, and Ms. Ujukuza did bring up a good point. Some of these items that are in here, the civic support request, there's only one that has an increase, which is the Free Public Library. There's currently a 1.5% increase, which is what the council had approved back in February. What I think we have to do as a council is come up with a revised policy on how these funds are distributed. Because in the past, once the budgets are approved and money becomes available, these groups are somewhat, given their money. Under this situation with COVID, and some of these facilities may be closed for extended periods of time, I think it would be in our best interest to have a little bit more control over the release of these funds, so that, if there are savings, they can start to evaluate. Each one of these groups, may need to reevaluate their own operations. Some of them have been shut down already. They may have some savings. There may be some revenue issues as well. But I think each of these civic support requests that we've already reviewed, and I still think that the council should have a little more discretion moving forward with how that money is released, so that if the library is closed down, then there could be some additional savings there. With that being said, that any surplus money there really should go back into our general fund moving forward. I don't want to see our civics, personally, I do not want to see money being added in at this point, only because I know where we've gone through to get to where we are in the budget. We do have some, obviously with COVID, there is some uncertainty, but I'd like to at least try to keep our budget intact, and evaluate things over the coming weeks to see what may change. We've all acknowledged through this process that there could be some changes. So I'd like to try and not expand the current civic support request beyond what has currently been accounted for. Because if we do, we have to increase taxes, or we have to cut something else within our budget. It's very hard for Mr. Rayner to go back now, and if we add $2,000 to go find that $2,000 somewhere else. If you're a counselor and you want to propose an increase, then I think we also have to figure out where that money comes from, and because Mr. Rayner and all the department heads have put their best foot forward in helping to generate this budget tonight. So if you are considering additions, let's also consider where those funds could come from. That's my point. Guidance, Ms. Ujukusa?
Yeah, and it's a good point. And it was, if you look back at the minutes of the meeting where we discussed these civic support requests, I believe you'll find that we did say that the motion was to consider some funding for a couple organizations with no specific dollar amount assigned. And those motions were passed 7-0, and that is what the vote on the Common Fence Point Association Wellness Center, as well as Clean Ocean Access. So I do believe that when we last discussed these items, they weren't zeroed out, that we were given the option to discuss those two in particular moving forward. And also with respect to the $1,000 to the Eastern Conservation Group, that one was not discussed at all. And actually, I would like to also discuss that item tonight. So I agree that we don't want to ask staff to go over the whole budget again. But my feeling is this about these civic support requests in general. Are we asking for an essential government service from these organizations? Are we getting something that we would have to ordinarily pay for ourselves, but really getting a much bigger bang for our buck? And do we have to support them in order to get any bucks? And I think if you do that analysis with respect to these requests, you'll find that adding the very tiny amounts of civic support that we are providing just give us a tremendous bang for our buck and save the taxpayers quite a bit of money, because they end up getting us grants that pay for stuff that we were going to do anyway and have to charge the taxpayers for. So I would argue that it's important to not lose this kind of funding. And we can take these organizations, and there are only 3 of them I'd like to discuss tonight, one at a time. But overall, I'll just give you the strongest example, which is that we got $339,000 for the Municipal Resilience Program that paid for work that we would have had to pay for ourselves. And we got that in large measure because we were partnered with these private organizations, specifically Common Fence Point, who was running a URI DEM partnership, and AIPC, which was doing the Island Waters program for us. So I think we'd be penny wise and pound foolish to not support a few of these groups that have really brought in a lot of money to us through grants. So I would like to talk about those 3 organizations that we said, well, 2 especially, that we already identified February 10th that we would revisit. And I think the first one is the CFP Common Fence Point. I would ask that we they are going to have to function possibly to pick up for the senior center some of their programs, and even act as a temporary housing for our senior center, not entirely, but partially, because we, by this fall, upcoming fall, are going to be required to do like $750,000 worth of fire and other safety upgrades. And so, you know, Common Fence Point basically gave us a community center. And for us not to give them any community support really cuts ourselves off at the knees trying to get the kind of amazing funding that Conley's Annie's been able to get through grants. So I would recommend that we give $5,000 to the CFP fund, because they get big grants and because we'll be asking them to do a lot. And they've been doing an amazing amount of work during COVID to help with the emergency preparedness activities. So I would make that motion now to add 5,000 for the CFP Arts Wellness Community Center. And you wanted, so that would be my motion. And you wanted a place to pull the money from. I would suggest that it could be found as we see savings in the other entities that are receiving money from us that might be closed down, be it the senior center, the library, et cetera.
I'll second that motion. And if I may comment, Mr. President.
Absolutely, Mr. Katzman.
So I don't need to echo everything that Councilman Fusa just said about the activities that the CP Community Center is, the services they're providing, the organizations like that provide services to our community are under extraordinarily more stress now than they've ever been. There's a greater need to a point of the senior center perhaps not being available. I understand CFP Community Center may be able to fulfill some of that need. And I think it's important that we support as a community that organization. By as a community, I mean with taxes. Look, to say you don't want to raise taxes is wonderful. Let's be clear, we already are. Our budget raises taxes. What we're talking about is an incremental difference of some 1, 2, 3, 5,000. Mizuji Fusa recommended 5,000. So if you want council to identify places to take it from, every item on the civic support budget, every organization has either been level funded or much lower funded or not funded at all. And I am the first person to champion and defend the Portsmouth Library. Going back a long time, I've identified that organization as being one of the few things that keep us a real community. That said, everybody is tightening their belt, getting no belt at all, and I would suggest we look to that $7,800 increase as perhaps something we could look to level fund the library. Other organizations are being funded. I'm not making that as a motion, I'm just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Mr. Hamilton?
I do see that, well, I'll have to scroll back down, but I believe Mike Mello was on there. He's still listed on there. I don't know if he wants to comment on that. I do understand that the library is currently closed right now. They're not expending any money specifically. Same with the senior center. I will disagree with Masuji Fusa a little bit, but the senior center is not officially dead till July 1st of next year, so we're not going to be expending any money until after July 1st, 2021. It's not happening in the fall. So taking money out of the senior center budget
I don't think she was proposed.
may be prudent because they may not need it. I didn't see Cindy on there. But
If I may, Mr. President, just to address that comment, Keith, I just want to know, just because a business or organization is closed doesn't mean they aren't still incurring expenses.
correct.
So
But not to the same extent. The library is still being heated, but probably not quite as warm as it normally is. The lights aren't always on, that kind of thing. And I don't know whether or not they're paying staff or anything, but they're not occurring as great as an expense as they are if they were fully open.
I'm not suggesting that we cut their budgets forever. I am saying in this budget year, when they're closed or the senior center's closed or anybody else is not incurring expenses because they are closed, that money go to fund these other organizations. And that is what I'm recommending. So I don't want you to characterize it as me wanting to slash their budgets.
But you need to specifically discuss where you want to take it from. You're just saying, hey, grab it from anywhere where you might be able to find it.
Well, I would like to have a better, they made their asks in February 11th. Before that, it had to be prepared in January. And they in no way were anticipating in their budgets closing of their facilities. So I am asking them to reevaluate so that we might be able to find the money to fund the other organizations.
So again, I guess Mike doesn't want to jump in here. I see him on here. I don't know if he wants to join in and say whether or not the the library could specifically absorb the $5,000 you want to utilize. I tend to agree with Mr. President that we shouldn't be moving the number. $1,028,226 was the civic support number that we came up with back in February 11th when we developed a plan that you asked for back in last year after the fiasco of civic support. And now we're jumping back in and just adding things back in haphazardly. I just think if you develop a plan and you agree to the plan, stick to the plan.
Okay, Mr. President, this was the plan. We voted to, quote, consider some funding for the CFP. We did not identify a dollar amount. And this is hardly haphazard. And I think it is cavalier to suggest that we're acting haphazardly when in fact we're making decisions based on the facts of the ground today, rather than a decision we made a year ago or 6 months ago or even 2 years ago. So we're both following the plan and proceeding forward in a considered manner. We're hardly haphazard here.
I mean,
find a place to pull it from. That's all I'm saying.
Don't
be wishy-washy. Step up and say, you said.
One at a time. No, it's just, they're two boxes. So,
right.
Mr. Katzman, you can.
I suggested for discussion amongst the council, and perhaps I wasn't clear enough, 2 sources. One, taxes. This, as I said, this budget raises taxes, so it is not appropriate to characterize it as something we're doing right now will raise taxes when in fact we already will be. I'm talking about increasing the budget by 1,000, 2,000, 5,000. That's one thing that I think is kind of to discuss. However much we charge in taxes is a reflection of what the people of Portsmouth, or what we best discern the people of Portsmouth want for our town. They want a library. They want a police department and paved roads. We make these decisions and they reflect the values of what we think the people want. I'm suggesting that perhaps they would spend $2,000 on mental health, or, well, we've already addressed that, but $1,000 on the community center. Alternatively, if the council would like to discuss it, you could look at that $7,800 that represents an increase in the library budget. So I've identified 2 sources we could discuss.
Okay. All right. Mr. Hamilton, did you?
I just think that we can't continue to, Mr. Rayner and the staff are doing so many different things on a daily basis. For us just to make a motion that says, hey, go out and see if you can find this, is irresponsible on the council's part. I think the motion should specifically state where you want to take it from. And if it's $5,000 from the library, then it's $5,000 from the library. If it's $5,000 from the senior center, it's $5,000 from the senior center. But specifically make that motion. Don't put more work on an already taxed administration while they're dealing with this crisis and trying to get a budget going.
All right, I will change the motion to be that we decrease the amount of money equally among all the current recipients by the percentage required to fund the things that I would like to add.
That still doesn't do it.
Can someone please restate what we're arguing about again? Like, what are the specific items that Mr. Jufuza and Mr. Katzman would like to add? Because I, at this point, have lost track.
Sorry, I apologize. I would like to add 5,000 for the CFP Center. I'd like to add the $2,000 for Clean Ocean Access, the $1,000 for the Eastern Rhode Island Conservation. So that is a total of 8,000. And I would recommend that we reduce the amounts we're giving to the other, for simplicity's sake, that we reduce the amounts giving to the other organizations by the amount necessary to cover $8,000.
And we already discussed adding the 3,000 for Newport Mental Health back in.
Yes.
That's already been voted on and done.
That's right.
I mean,
so that's not part of the number that we're discussing.
Just as a
So
suggestion.
so wait a second, just to be clear, there's a bottom line number of $1,028,000 And we're arguing over 8,000
No,
to support organizations that we think are important for our community?
the number is 1,028,200.
226, okay.
That's the number.
And we're, arguing about potentially increasing that 0.8% to be able to accommodate the $8,000 we're talking about? Why are we nickel and diming this? I mean, can we just add the $8,000, please?
I would propose we level fund the library, which would cover almost all costs that Councilor Fujifusa is requesting.
Mr. Ryan, if perhaps you could make that as an amendment, motion to amend.
My motion to amend would be for this year only to level fund the Portsmouth Free Public Library, saving $7,873 and applying that towards $5,000 for the Common Fence Point Art Wellness and Community Center, $2,000 for Clean Ocean Access, and $1,000 for Eastern Rhode Island Conservation. We would still need to make up $127.
I'd be willing to bet if we asked Mr. McLaughlin, who's online, if he would be able to take with 1,873, I think he'd be okay.
I don't know. You make a big assumption there, Keith.
I understood.
Do you need a
Dave's a pretty
second
good
on that
guy.
amendment?
Yes.
I said, Daniela, I'll second that amendment.
So let's just clarify here. I don't, hold on. I know we've got some questions, but wait a minute. One of the people you asked about. Who was it?
It was Dave McLaughlin from Clean Ocean Access.
Is Dave on the line? He was?
Oh, he is.
He is. Where is he?
He's
Okay.
He's back.
Where is he? I lost him. Let's go to Mr. McLaughlin.
Hi. I just wanted to say thank you for the council for exploring this, and just to briefly answer the question by Councilor Hamilton, the request you made is certainly something that we would accommodate. So happy to talk more about the points, but I did wanted to at least acknowledge that.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so we should go to Eric D now, which is Eastern Rhode Island. Sorry. Let's go to Eastern Rhode Island Conservation District. You're muted at the moment. Are we muting him or are they muted?
Okay, just a second.
You're live.
You're on.
Hello?
Hi, Eric.
Oh, can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay, so this is Sarah Churgan, 36 Heritage Drive, Portsmouth, Rhode Island. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to say that thank you last year for your generous civic support for the organization, which allowed us to bring $80,000 to Melville Elementary School for the stormwater mitigation and outdoor learning activity zone, which we're going to be finishing up this spring. It's already been used by the students and the teachers who absolutely love it. And we are also just starting a partnership with Portsmouth Middle School. There is a local farmer who has reached out to me and wants to have the district use 6 acres of its property as an educational ag innovation area. And so I have been working with the principal, vice principal, and the science coordinator at Portsmouth Middle School. And the $1,000 would help to leverage the money in order to get that up off the ground. And we already have 25 students who are doing a virtual classroom or class with us, headed by the science coordinator, Margie Brennan. And these kids are so excited to be involved, to start with something ground zero and then bring it up through concept design and then have a flourishing community garden to be part of that. And the $1,000 would leverage that. So that's what we're asking for.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And it sounds like we have a revised amendment. We haven't voted on yet, but if approved, would help you get your funding.
Thank you.
Okay. We have. Do we have, is Mr. Fitzmaurice, or is he still want? Can we just ask Mr. Fitzmaurice?
Thank you, Mr. President. Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Kristen Court. I'd like a little clarification. Are we increasing the amount for a conference point from $20,000 to $25,000 in this motion?
No, we're reducing it to 5,000.
No. Increasing it to 5,000 from
Yeah.
zero.
From zero.
Well, from 20,000 last year to 5,000 this year.
Yeah. Mr. Fitzmaurice,
The page before me says 20,000 requested FY 2021.
Yes, but they weren't funded in February when we went through this.
Okay.
Mr. Fitzmaurice, on the end of that spreadsheet is council decision, yes and no?
Sorry,
see
I
that?
did not understand.
At the end of your spreadsheet, is there a section that says council decision as a header and then yes, FY 2021 change and no FY 2021?
Okay, I see that. Thank you. All right, in general, I'd like to make remarks about funding nonprofit organizations. I think this is something that we got into years ago, as I said, in 2020 when we first did this. We got into funding a good number of nonprofits that, I mean, we can all interpret that every one of these nonprofits makes some contribution to the society in Portsmouth, but directly using taxpayer funds to support these things, I think is a bad idea. We stopped it in the last, probably something like 2009, in the last session. You know, I think we need to consider where we're at. Some members of the council may not think the taxes are going up very much, but I do. And I think they're going up a whole lot. I think the key thing here is to look to the citizens and try and economize in the money that we're spending. That's the best way to make sure we make it through without dipping further into the fund balance, the town's financial reserves. So as a policy, I don't care for these contributions to the three organizations that Ms. Ujabusa has identified. Just think it's bad public policy because that list could grow to 50 or 60, and it will if we keep this up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Chief Dragon is still on the line with his hand up. I think. Chief Dragon, do you have a comment? You do?
Hello, just checking that the $3,000 has been removed from our budget, that there isn't going to be any additional removal of funds to fund these other organizations. Is that?
No, we've only removed the $3,000 from your fund.
Okay.
From your funding request.
Thank
We've
you.
already hit you. It's someone else's turn.
Okay. That's what I just wanted to check.
Okay. I do see Mike Mello is on the line.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. I just want to respond with regard to the library. No, we run what is a town service in half the libraries in Rhode Island, completely paid for by the town. We're not that way. We have to raise $70,000 next year in order to meet our budget. We do that through a townwide fundraiser, touch a truck, dinners, a whole variety of things to raise that $70,000. And we're really falling behind this year because we haven't been able to do these events. And we haven't been able to do the town-wide mailing because we thought it was inappropriate considering this virus that we're going through. So we're really behind the 8 ball. In addition, we don't have, all of our full-time employees, by the way, are working. The part-timers we had to lay off, but we also don't have unemployment insurance, which means we have to reimburse the state for whatever they give to these employees. And some of them are going to get more money than we actually pay them, but we're going to have to reimburse that. So we really need the support this year, and we're going to need it next year, because it's $70,000 for our group to raise between fines. Of course, we're not collecting any fines right now. We're not doing fundraisers. And speaking of an organization that gets grants, we have gotten millions of dollars over the years by going out for grants. But the town did not put the new roof on the library, did not build the parking lots, did not paint the library. It goes on and on and on how we get grants to keep the library going. And that loss of 78, 73 next year is gonna hurt us.
Okay. Any comments from?
Mr. Mello, I appreciate you jumping in there. And I agree that these are very difficult times. I would check and make sure, or double check on that unemployment insurance to see if you do have to pay that back underneath the COVID. I would double check on that one. I don't know if you're going to have to pay that back.
Well, we've been filling out the forms for unemployment that we fill out whenever we do have an employee that needs unemployment security. So I assume they're continuing the same type of thing. We have to pay, I think we have to pay back the state portion, not the extra $600 that they're gonna get.
Not the stimulus, okay. Are there any savings that, or are you seeing, and I guess are your savings that you're having right now in terms of operational costs matching what you're not able to raise? Or, I mean, are you spending the same that you would be spending if you were open full boat?
Well, the building is still heated, the electricity is still on, and we provide this Wi-Fi service for people out in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. We're still cutting the grass. We're still doing a lot of those things. So I really think the savings are really not going to be that great.
We have some comments from Ms. Uchipuzzo.
Well, I guess if there are more comments specifically on that, you can hear them, but I was going to possible to amend the amendment and suggest that not all 8,000 or approximately 8,000 be taken from the 1.5% increase with the library, and instead 4,000 from the library and 4,000 from the senior center.
Yeah, I think we might, would it be easier to withdraw the amendment or the modifications? We know you're looking to fund 5,000 for Common Fence Point, 1,873 for, well, let's just say it was 2,000 from Clean Ocean and 1,000 for Eastern Rhode Island. The issue is where that comes from. Before it was coming from the library, so it might be easier to just
make a new motion. Yeah,
I'm willing to withdraw my, if that makes things simpler, I'm willing to withdraw my motion.
And I will amend my motion based on what Mr. Mello has just said, and reminding me of the amount of grants that they have brought in. that we reduce it to 4,000 from the library and 4,000 from the senior center to cover the 8,000.
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion from council?
I'll only make one part of the discussion. And the Martin Luther King Center is feeding a lot of people and also people in Portsmouth. I would like to see us be able to give them some money and finding from someplace. I would think that we could do the senior center down to 84 and make it 6,000, Mr. Jufusa, and give the $2,000 to the Martin Luther King Center. Because I believe at this point in time, they're probably doing just as much feeding of people in Portsmouth that are in need as our food bank is.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And that $2,000 might go a long way to feed people in this time. And I think that is a worthwhile service that we can put forth.
Right. And again, to reiterate the analysis, it is not simply that we give money to all worthy causes. We give money to organizations that are providing essential services to our citizens. And also that we are getting, big bang for our buck. And I think across the board, everything that we would be funding is doing that for us. And so I would amend my motion to include Mr. Hamilton's suggestion. So,
Mr. President, I want to thank Mr. Hamilton for adding Martin Luther King Center back in. I know we discussed this in February, didn't make the cut, but they certainly are under extraordinary stress right now trying to meet the urgent needs. And I'm glad that we're adding that, and I support that.
Okay, so let me just try to recap. Mr. Rayner's got it. Mr. Rayner, no, we're comparing notes here, but I'm going to defer.
Get your pencils out.
Jen and Mr. Aguirre, keep me honest, but so what we're looking at is civic appropriation for the Portsmouth Public Library, $528,753. Portsmouth Historical Society, $7,000. The Portsmouth Senior Center, $84,000. Couldn't read my own handwriting. Portsmouth Prevention Coalition, $31,696. Common Fence Point Arts, Wellness, and Community Center, $5,000. Clean Ocean Access, $2,000. The Eastern Rhode Island Conservation, $1,000. Newport County Community Mental Health, $3,000. Portsmouth Island School Foundation, $59,383.
Prudence.
Did I say? Yeah, Prudence. Dr. Martin King, the Dr. Martin Luther King Community Center, $2,000. Fields, $1,000. Great Grenade Incorporated, $3,000. State Library Aid, $116,092. Volunteer Fire Department, $184,302, for a total civic support appropriation of $1,028,226.
Correct.
So we would ask for the council to provisionally approve civic support for $1,028,226.
So moved.
No, you can't do that. We first got to vote on Mr. Fusa's motion. but
On the amendment, that's right. That's
Mr.
right.
McLaughlin still has his hand up. I don't know if it's his arm's getting tired yet, but it's been up there a while.
Let's just check with Mr. McLaughlin.
He's strong. He picks up garbage all the time.
Hello?
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to say thank you for the council for considering civic support for Clean Ocean Access. We had great momentum in 2019 with internships, zero waste activities, working with schools, working with Ray at the transfer station, over 24 beach cleanups. We plan to expand our water testing program. We've monitored all the rights of ways every month, helped the town with the enforcement of the plastic bag ordinance, and thanks to your help, we put together the Aquidneck Island Earth Week initiative, which unfortunately became a virtual event, but your leadership to support that was very helpful. So yeah, so we appreciate the consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the functions that we provide and really where we can go together. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so we had motion and a second on Ms. Ujjufuza's amendment. Correct?
It's her main motion. There's no amendment.
Her main motion, okay.
Correct. We're
And vote as for Chad, all of those things instead of going back and forth.
Hold on.
Derek.
Hold on one second. We've got another question, and then I just need to clarify something. Who's got a question?
Derek Crosby has his hand up.
Mr. Crosby, do you have a question, comment?
Yes, I have a comment about the Prudence Island Fire Department, but it's perhaps way long overdue, so I'll withdraw.
Okay. Okay. So, I've lost track of the this was the motion, right?
The motion is to take $4,000 from the library's increase, $6,000 out of the
Right.
appropriation to the
Senior
senior center, and then add 2,000 to Clean Ocean Access, 5,000 to Common Fence Point, 1,000 to Rhode Island, Eastern Rhode Island, excuse me, and $2,000 to Dr. Martin Luther King Center.
Correct.
Keep the bottom line the same.
Keep the bottom line the same. So we had the motion and the
Dr.
second.
Ryan seconded.
Okay. All those in favor?
Ms. Ujjufuza?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. The motion passes 7-0. Provisionally approved that at $1,028,220.
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Ujjufuza?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
And Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. So that provisionally approves. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all for collaborating on the civic support here to make sure we were able to get these groups addressed. So thank you all for that. I know it's tough. These are tough decisions. So thank you all. Yes, tomorrow night we will finish with the emergency management and then the total recap on the budget.
Motion to adjourn, Keith Hamilton.
Seconded. Mark Ryan.
In favor?
Ms. Ujjufuza?
Aye.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Aguirre?
Aye. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you all, and we will see you all
Tomorrow night.
tonight.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Aye. Thanks.
Thank
It's
you.
been fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.